Between the 16th and 19th centuries, corsair fleets abducted more than 1 million Europeans from their homes and ships, forcing them into a brutal system of slavery. This map shows where that trade actually happened. These fleets operated right across the Mediterranean Sea, directed entirely by powerful North African states. From the ports of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, the Barbary corsairs launched their campaigns. The Barbary states maintained highly organized, state-sponsored military navies. Human beings functioned as primary cargo, the economic fuel required to run the state. To harvest that fuel, the corsairs bypassed heavily armed European warships. Instead, they launched stealth raids at dawn, striking directly at defenseless coastal villages. The raiders mapped a terrifying geographic reach. They pushed out of the Mediterranean, navigating deep into the freezing waters of the North Atlantic to strike as far away as Ireland and Iceland. During the 1631 sack of Baltimore in Ireland, corsairs landed over 200 men. Over 2 violent days, they systematically abducted entire families from their homes. The attacks left physical scars on the European landscape. The abandoned ruins of O'Driscoll's castle in Baltimore still stand today, marking a settlement completely hollowed out by the raid. A few years earlier, in 1627, corsairs hit the Icelandic island of Heimaey, capturing nearly 400 people. No coastal community in Western Europe was entirely safe. The isolation of these fishing towns made them perfect targets. They were defenseless harvesting grounds, cultivated to feed a massive Mediterranean economic engine. Captives surviving the agonizing journey back to North Africa were unloaded, paraded through the streets, and appraised in massive open-air markets. This historical illustration shows the Badistan in Algiers. It operated as the central commercial hub where thousands of abducted Europeans were meticulously appraised and auctioned to the highest bidder. The states of Barbary utilized these captives to drive a highly sophisticated international extortion racket. The immediate value of a wealthy captive was their ransom potential. Human lives were explicitly converted into international financial leverage. Back in Europe, local parishes, churches, and desperate families routinely bankrupted themselves, pooling every available coin to buy back their captured loved ones. The corsairs knew exactly how to maximize this revenue. They deployed torture and psychological warfare, deliberately sending horrific accounts of suffering back to Europe to manipulate emotions and drive up ransom demands. Documents like this 17th century engraving flooded European cities. Captivity narratives depicting prisoners chained to posts and brutally whipped were widely published to generate the funds the corsairs demanded. This extortion eventually escalated to the geopolitical level. To protect their merchant ships from being seized, sovereign European nations agreed to pay massive annual tributes to the Barbary states. Even the newly independent United States fell victim to the racket. This chart tracks the early U.S. federal budget. By the year 1800, almost 20% of the nation's annual revenue was siphoned off as tribute to prevent Barbary attacks. By weaponizing individual human suffering, the Barbary states successfully extracted vast wealth and geopolitical dominance from the world's emerging superpowers. But if your family was poor and your government refused to pay, there was no rescue. These unransomed captives transitioned from being market commodities with a price tag to the permanent, brutally exploited property of the North African states. In Morocco, the ruthless despot Sultan Moulay Ismail acquired tens of thousands of these Christian slaves to fuel his own immense ambitions. Their utility was grueling and absolute. Slaves, including an 11-year-old English cabin boy named Thomas Pellow, were forced to forge weapons and fight on the front lines of the Sultan's wars. The ultimate manifestation of this captive labor was the construction of the Sultan's gargantuan palace and sprawling monuments in the city of Meknes. The physical legacy of that labor remains intact. This massive Bab el-Mansour gateway in Meknes is a testament to the scale demanded by the Sultan. For those without the wealth to buy their freedom, their bodies and their lifetimes became the grinding physical foundation of North African imperial monuments. This 300-year system of terror did not end through polite diplomacy. It was broken by overwhelming naval bombardments during the First and Second Barbary Wars. Successive strikes by British and Dutch fleets, combined with the later French conquest of Algeria, finally dismantled the corsair infrastructure for good. The Barbary slave trade was a multi-century economic engine that funded vast empires and forced the creation of modern military forces like the United States Navy, leaving a permanent scar on the history and coastlines of the Mediterranean and beyond.